Welcome to Ask Evelyn Live, where we answer your questions about compost, recycling, garbage, and other trashy topics. It is Wednesday, and we are so excited to be here with you. I am Becca Fong, and I am the Residential Outreach Coordinator for Seattle Public Utilities. So I'm the person that sends you some of these handy guides, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. This is episode 44, One Can to Rule Them All. Why Seattle can accept so many different types of materials in their recycling carts. All right, and as always, we are joined every week with Pat Kaufman, who's getting signed on here. Quick reminder that this show runs on your questions, so make sure you guys keep them coming. We love hearing from you. You can send them to us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or old school at askevelyn@seattle.gov. Hey, Pat.
How's it going, Becca?
It's going good.
I was just holding up my guide as well. Got the fresh guide in the mail. Love it. Really like it.
I know, these are good ones. So it's kind of it's the perfect reason to start talking about this today. And we have a question from a customer specifically because they got their new guide.
That's right. I'll just jump right into the question. So here we go.
All right.
So he writes, hi, Evelyn. I just got my new collection calendar and sorting guide in the mail. I put it up on the fridge, which is a great place for it. Put it up on the fridge so everyone at my house knows what goes where. Where I used to live, we had to separate some of our items, and we couldn't recycle nearly as many items as we do in Seattle, like to-go containers. Why is that? Thanks, Omar. Great question, Omar. What's the quick answer, Becca?
So quick answer is we are recycling processors. So you guys have heard us talk a lot about this. Our recycling processors were public services, and they can do two things to be able to accept things in our recycling carts. They need to be able to sort that material out, and they also need to have viable end markets. So all of the materials that you can put into your carts, all of this stuff is able to be sorted out and has a viable market to be turned into something brand new. But there's so many more details that you guys all know about this. So Pat, let's get into it.
Yeah, well, Seattle's program is, what we call single stream or, all in one. It's a form of commingled collection where you can put all the materials into one cart. We find it's easier for customers sometimes just commingle it all, and then we sort it out at the recycle center.
Right.
Years ago, it was source separated, which is like, multiple different bins and different crates and containers and side bins and whatnot. And so we went to this for ease and convenience of the consumer, of the customer. And so it does make for some sortation challenges down at the recycle center. So that's the backside of it. There's always challenges. On one side it's good, on the other side it's not so good. But
totally.
So making sure it's clean, making sure it's empty, clean, and dry. Our Recycle Right campaign messaging, that's very important. And just making sure that the right things are going in the bin in the first place.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important point. And I love kind of all the different terms, mixed recycling, commingled recycling. And I think the term recycling is often meant just what goes into the cart. So that's kind of part of it. So the sortation, like you were talking about, you can sort all those different things when they go to the material recovery facility, the MRF. They can kind of sort all that stuff out. And what is really interesting is that in particular, Omar talked about to-go containers, right? And a lot of those are paper and plastic, which is where we get a ton of our questions, right? And when I was looking at the Where Does It Go guide, which is a brand new one for this year, which is great, you'll see that we've got all these different categories, right? So we've got 5 main categories of items. And at the MRF, they can actually sort all of these different things out, right? So you've got plastic containers, bottles, and jugs. And that's kind of like one grouping of type of plastics, and then the other plastics. So Pat, you were talking about kind of what happens with the other plastics and having markets.
Well, so they use a lot of mechanical sortation, functions and strategies and machinery and staffing and so forth. So they really try and, sift it all out. So you got paper and cardboard going this way and glass tumbles down this way and whatnot. Aluminum jumps off the belt and metal gets magnetized. So you end up with all this mixed plastic, right? And they use an optical sorter, these infrared sortation devices that basically pull the high grade plastic out, the number 1 and number 2. Not that we go by numbers, y'all, but this is what the recycle center does. And then all the other plastic stays together as a mixed load, and it's sent to a secondary facility where they again employ a lot of mechanical sorting devices. And there's markets for all this plastic. It's different grades, it's different configurations. Our focus to the customers is as long as it's a rigid, hard, plastic container and it's a bottle, tub, or jar, something like that, then we're okay. We'll accept that. We actually accept a couple other things, as you show in the picture. There's some unique plastic items on there too, the little storage container and buckets and whatnot. But the main messaging, when we talk about our top 5 recyclables, when we talk about plastics, we talk about bottles, tubs, and jars.
Totally. So it is kind of interesting to think about, plastics, the mixed plastics are the things that kind of come up in the news a lot, right? Like that's kind of what catches people's attention. And we do get a lot of questions from you guys, and please keep them coming. We love talking to you guys about that, about what happens to that. And certainly a lot of folks want to know why we can take those. And like Pat was saying, those go to another secondary facility and get sorted out into the different types. And then when they're sorted out, then they can get sold on to be made into brand new things, which is kind of the full definition of being recyclable.
That's right. That's the loop. I mean, all these plastics are, eventually they're collected, they're sorted into those different grades of polymers, different types of plastics. Then they're ground down and they go through a system of, refining the plastic, bathing it, air drying it, whatnot, and then repelletizing it, putting it back in those little kind of BB-sized pellets, which is what the whole plastics industry works within. They all work within pelletized plastic as their feedstock. So you really want that clean plastic product from our blue carts to go through the system and end up being repelletized and going back to production domestically, ideally, if we can, which is what we're doing, SPU, which is unique. That's another thing. Our program is unique that way, and that we are, working with some local, regional, I should say, service providers of the secondary sortation, and making sure that these plastics are sorted into different grades, repelletized, and remarketed. They may be marketed globally, but once they're in the pelletized form, it's a true commodity. It's not, there's not any discards once it gets to that. We've got it refined down to that. So we got a pretty good system going for that, and for paper as well, similarly.
Totally. One more point I wanted to point out. I know Omar didn't call this out in his question, but we get a lot of questions about glass. That also comes up in the news quite a bit.
Yeah.
And again, it's the sortation and the market. So a lot of places are not accepting glass in their commingled recycling anymore because it's hard to sort, and they don't necessarily have markets because it's heavy to transport. A really good example here locally in Seattle is that we are able to sort that glass out, and then it actually gets transported to get kind of crushed into little pellets. And that factory actually is just north of the First Avenue South Bridge on East Marginal Way. And then literally, across the parking lot, Pat? It gets turned into bottles. So, I mean,
we're so lucky. We've got terrific downstream processors right here in the region. We've got the steel plant, Nucor Steel, over in West Seattle. And then we've got the glass plant right down in South Seattle, in the same area, basically. And then our recycle center is right on the rail line. So a lot of these materials can be either truck loaded or rail loaded and sent off that way. So, and then of course we got the Port of Seattle for our, overseas commodity brokering as well. So, we're in a great spot. Unfortunately, there are some communities not too far away where when you have to truck things a little further through traffic in our region, it raises the cost per ton. You have to add that truck and driver time to every ton of material moved. And that can really, make it difficult for smaller cities to afford to manage some of these materials. That's why you'll see some small cities around Seattle, but also farther away. I just read Walla Walla had decided they're no longer taking certain materials. So, through the industry and information and whatnot, you hear things, and it's just hard for them to move product to marketplace when they're not right where the brokers want to have it handy,
Totally. Well, Omar, thank you for the question. Pat and I love to go deep. We could talk about this forever. But hopefully you got a little bit of information. And remember, we can take so many different things because of two things. Our processor can sort them into the different commodities, and we have access to those end markets, which is what we were talking about. So that's why, congratulations, welcome to Seattle. And that's why you can put more things in your commingled cart. So, all right. Really quickly, we're going to get into the part of the show, which is our weekly waste tip. And we covered a lot of ground, but it's nice to kind of package it for you. Since we're talking about the blue cart, our recycle cart, we've got the top 5 categories that we talk about with recycle, right? We've got plastic, paper, cardboard, glass, and metal, right? And so my tip for plastic, and, Pat, you were already alluding to this, is to forget the numbers. Just completely forget the numbers. That is not important. That's not how we recycle. You want to look at shape. So we always talk about bottles, tubs, and jugs. So I don't have a pop bottle, but you guys know what pop bottles look like. But a jug is something with a big handle, right?
Oh yeah.
So that is definitely go by that
Yeah.
shape if you can pick it up. And then a tub is something like this. You know, you've got yogurt tubs, you've got sour cream tubs, salsa tubs, things like that. Those three things, bottles, tubs, and jugs, no guessing. We will take all of those. Empty, clean, and dry, of course.
Yes, that's the critical part, you
Yeah.
know. And you know, have a little brush handy at the kitchen sink because some of that stuff gets dried on the edge.
Oh, the yogurt?
So yeah, just let it soak a little bit, do a little brush, you're good, you know.
Totally. And then you had another tip for kind of on the to-go container kind of tip too.
Yeah, I guess the other part, you know, which we don't really show a lot of images here, is in the paper category.
Yeah.
Paperboard. I wanted to talk a little bit about paper. People talk about like to-go containers, the full top to-go boxes, which I don't have one right now handy. I've already, but I happen to have a to-go cup here.
Perfect.
Went Shake Shack the other day, and so it's poly-coated, right? It's a poly-coated cup, just like a frozen food box would be.
Totally.
You know, there's a poly-coat to keep the condensation down and kind of keep the paper from degrading while it's being in the freezer, out of the freezer, transported, whatnot. So these are poly-coated paper boards, which is different than like laminated paper or like these stickers. You know, stickers are not recyclable. We don't. There's not enough fiber in there. There's not enough yield and fiber to deal with all that shiny part. You know, it's the shiny part versus the fiber part. And so paperboard's great. I just want to repeat that in Seattle, we love it. It's a lot of fiber in the board, and there is a little shininess that the mills have to deal with, but that's part of the reality. And it's like magazines. You know, they have a lot of inks and coatings and stuff these days, but they're still fully recyclable. So want to get that stuff in the recycle bin. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one, because I think was it a couple of weeks ago we had a question about that poly-coated butcher paper. So that's real thin and that doesn't have enough fiber
too thin.
in it. So.
Yeah, it's got to be a yield. You know, it's got to be kind of using the common sense of like how much good do you get out of the not so good. You know, so so we're trying to hit that happy medium. But again, kind of going back, harkening on the same old message: empty, clean, and dry. You know, even if it's a full top box, to-go container, a cup. Really want it to be empty, rinsed out, and then dry would be ideal.
Absolutely. And we're going to put some links to our Recycle Right page so you can remember those tips. And then a video of the Republic Murph, which is always fantastic to look at that sortation in action, which is super fun. I can watch that thing all the time. It's a pretty great thing. And then another link that we're actually going to put in there, we didn't touch on this in the answer to Omar, your question, but plastic film recycling, which used to be accepted in the commingled cart, which we don't take anymore because of the sortation. So you can drop that off at various retail partners. So we'll put a link in our show notes for that as well. So
yeah, good tips. Good point.
All right. Keep those questions coming, folks. We love hearing from you. And with that, that's an episode. And thank you guys so much for joining us. We really love hearing from you. It is so fun to talk trash with you every week. And we'll see you next week at 1:30. And with that, I'm Becca Fong. And remember, life's a little bit simpler with less stuff.
And I'm Pat Kaufman. Remember, everybody, to recycle right. And a special quick shout out to our buddy Gemini, who's been behind the scenes helping us out for a number of months now in this program. And he's moving on to a different position for a while. So thanks a lot, Gemini.
Yeah, we're going to miss you, but we're not far away. All right. Take care. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.